Konstantin Kisin, right-wing commentator, author and co-host of the Trigonometry podcast, went on Question Time last night, quite frankly, got obliterated. During an exchange with Labour's Douglas Alexander, Alexander pulled out a smackdown on Kisin.
When Fraser Nelson put it to you that Rishi Sunak is absolutely English,
I said he's
what
British.
did you reply?
I said he's British.
You said he's a brown Hindu.
No, that's not what I said. I said
English?
he's British. I said he's
How
British.
is he?
So Kisin was accused of saying that Rishi Sunak isn't English because he's a brown Hindu, prompting Kisin to say, well, it's not true. I didn't say that. I said he was British. Well, he just lied to the audience and to millions of people on national TV. Here is Kisin on his own podcast, Trigonometry.
I would say that Rishi Sunak is as English as Tizer and Wyferns, right? He is absolutely English. He was born and bred here. And I wouldn't say that the colour of his skin makes him any
He's
less.
a brown Hindu. How is he English?
Because he's born and bred here.
So by being born here, you become English, in your opinion?
Yeah.
I love that. By being born in England, you become English. You don't become English if you're born here, right? I mean, you're born. You're already English when you're born. That's a really weird phrase he's saying. But like, that is quintessentially racist, isn't it? To say that, well, Rishi Sunak certainly isn't English because he's a brown Hindu. Okay, then what about a white man who's half Polish, was born in this country, has an English accent? Would Kisin ever question whether he's English or not? Of course he wouldn't. Most of us have blood elsewhere. Most of us are descendants of immigrants, but the colour of one's skin is the only time that's called into question. So Kisin assumedly thinks that I'm not English. I was born in this country, and I have, by the way, it's not just about being born in this country. Obviously, it's part of it, but also it's the identity and culture you adopt. You know, I have very English identity because I've born and been amongst English people. I have the same interests as English people and British people. But, you know, that's him saying Rishi Sunak isn't English when he's very, you know, again, he's a conservative, don't like his politics. He's quintessentially English. He's a very posh Englishman, but like he's very, very English. And of course, he's trying to lie on Question Time, trying to get out of it. And this is what I find with these people. They're such, to excuse my French, pussies. They're pussies because they'll say something really, really bad, really, really racist in their own domain, whether it's tweeting it out, whether it's on his own podcast. And as soon as they get called out for it, they actually don't stand by their principles. He could say, you're absolutely right, I don't think Rishi Sunak is English, but he knows that the Question Time audience and those watching would be like, this guy's a racist, we don't like him. They're very aware of their politics and how their politics is hated. Now, don't get me wrong, we are seeing the rise of racism, we are seeing the rise of the far right, but most people would be like, you're English if you're born here and you have, you know, the English identity regardless of the colour of your skin. Most people would say that, and most people look at Kisin and be like, you're a nutcase, you're an idiot, you're a racist. So, in my view, why can't these people just stick to their guns and just openly admit that they're racist? They won't do it. In fact, they smear you by saying, well, you keep calling me racist, and no one's going to fall for it anymore. It's absolutely ridiculous. Now, what's funny about this is he doubled down on Twitter. This is what he said. Amusing on Question Time tonight, tried to explain to Labour minister that calling people racist won't stop people's concerns about uncontrolled mass immigration, so he proceeded to imply that I am racist with prepared misquotes. Didn't address a single argument. Clip soon. I mean, he didn't give a misquote. That's a quote, and we've just shown you the video of what he said. It's crazy. Now, look, I'm sorry to say, and I'm obviously biased here, but all the right wing do is lie and lie and lie. You saw the footage on Question Time. You saw the footage on him on Trigonometry, and he's doubling down. Damo, we are constantly told that the left have become extreme, and those who are considered far right today were actually just centrist 10 years ago, whilst having prominent right-wing commentators saying Rishi Sunak isn't English. The reality is the debate has actually gone so far to the right, and we're facing a really dark future in politics.
The left isn't becoming more extreme. It's just that we're staying still and everybody else is going, wee, that way with the Overton window. Or that way, whichever way. I'm mirrored, I think, aren't I? Anyway, yeah, the views that were considered fringe a decade ago are now being mainstream, but it's because the Overton window has just been skewed further and further to the right. You get a prominent commentator in the case here questioning whether Rishi Sunak is really English because he's brown-skinned. Well, newsflash, he was born in bloody Southampton. That makes him nothing but English. No matter what you think of him, no matter what you think of his politics or anything else, you can't get away from where he was born. Yet this is now apparently legitimate debate. It's madness. The whole society is getting reformed, if you like, but not in the good way, in the very, very bad way. And, you know, you've got other examples in politics that are driving this as well. The prime example is that of Kier Starmer and the fact he continues to keep trying to copy reform all the time. Instead of challenging that drift rightwards, he's just gone that way himself, dragged Labour that way, copying reform's language on migration and on protest and on belonging here. And, you know, he thinks that's going to get him voters from the far right. That seems to be what he's determined this is going to do. That seems to be what he's getting told, because let's face it, I don't think he has an original thought in his head. He has to be handled. So everything ends up getting dragged to the right anyway, and that Overton window just goes with it. And then you get the example that we've had here with Konstantin Kisin, which is the media compounding the problem by endlessly platforming the likes of Reform and right-wing culture figures like Kisin. Now, he's being represented here as a defender of British common sense, but with a name like Konstantin Vladimirovich Kisin. He's Russian-born. He was born in Moscow. So who's more British, him or Sunak, if you want to think in those kind of terms? But he's made a career here, or become infamous, shall we say, about talking about who belongs and who doesn't belong in Britain. And that isn't an attack on his background either, because I think he's actually mixed race himself. But it's about the double standard that's on show. And of course, nobody here would, you talked about yourself in your own experiences there, Curtis. If I were to look at myself in the same way, I can sit here with all the white supremacy in the world. I've got a Swedish grandfather. Nobody would know the difference. I would never get questioned about my right to belong here instead of getting bungled off to Västerbotten or whatever part of Sweden it was he was from. But people with immigrant backgrounds should be celebrated for policing belonging here, is what we're looking at, while others get questioned for their legitimacy. So it's not a good faith debate to begin with, because what you're doing is you're normalizing exclusion. And that's why moments like Kisin getting rinsed on Question Time matter more, because scrutiny exposes how shallow and inconsistent all of these arguments truly are. So no, the left isn't going too far, because the left is still the left. It's a political class, a media environment that keeps shifting their baseline rightwards. And then they act shocked when, exclusionary ideas come out and they start to sound normal. And if that continues unchecked, yes, the future does get darker. But it's not because people are demanding too much. It's because too many in power are refusing to draw lines here anymore. The only good aspect of this that I can see at all is that charlatans like Starmer are being exposed for who and what they are. And it's leaving a vacuum on the left behind them, which is now being filled by the likes of the Green Party, who are now getting more space to grow. And grow they absolutely are.
We also have to look at the responsibility of the BBC, because they're platforming him. They're platforming Nigel Farage. I mean, Nigel Farage, who often criticises the BBC for being left-wing, built his career. I mean, there will be no Nigel Farage as potentially Prime Minister if he wasn't constantly put on Question Time. In fact, I read a report that shows that Question Time often has a right-wing bent in terms of bringing on their guests. When it comes to journalists, typically they're right-wing over left-wing. Of course, I could have just seen that with my eyes and ears, but we have a report that says this. But we have these very people. I mean, Lawrence Fox is another example. They moan and they bleat about the lefty BBC, yet they get platformed for their views. And I think, look, I'm all for like open debate and free speech and stuff, but I do think you also have to question the integrity of people. It's not about banning right-wing people, but it's at least having intellectually curious right-wing people. Maybe they're a smaller number, but there's a couple of right-wingers out there I think are at least intelligent. But no, they just seem to be picking the loudest mouths now.
Yeah, I mean, journalism as a whole is bereft with people who are from a certain class. I mean, all the criticism they aim at the Green Party is a reason to not vote for them. Actually, it's a good reason. You can apply it across the mainstream journalistic world in this country, across the board, and you can say, well, why are you listening to them? They're not your class. If you have to be born with a silver spoon in your mouth to get somewhere in the MSM these days. When was the last time you were on Question Time, Curtis? Remind me. Exactly. That's the point, isn't it? You're a lefty. You're a journalist. But you're not invited on because you're not the right sort of journalist. You won't make the right noises as the BBC want. The BBC, that's the sort of people that'll push a poll of just 143 people in it as if that's somehow news, as if that's somehow some factual basis to base a media segment on, a narrative. And it's not. It's rubbish. It's nonsense. They shouldn't have given that poll the time of day. But they do, because it pushes a certain line. It pushes a certain narrative. Now, the likes of the BBC, which we fund, is even more unforgivable, I would argue, than, say, mainstream newspapers, which are run by billionaire press barons, because we're all more aware of the fact they're run by billionaire press barons these days. And you have to wonder about the integrity of a journalist who chooses to work for such a publication, because they're going to be given a narrative, they're going to be given an instruction, they're going to be given a line that they have to follow, that they have to toe, and their articles and what they pass off as news to inform us is not. So, you know, where do you draw a line? Well, they get some credibility left, or get some credibility back if they have the likes of you on these shows, and not the likes of the usual muppets that they keep platforming, who talk drivel and get overpaid for it.